You're listening to Spotlight, the podcast that fosters connections with veterans and military spouses. Here's your host, Bob Louthan.
Welcome, everybody. This is Bob Louthan, the host of the Spotlight on the Veteran Crowd Network. Welcome our guest today, Kevin Black. He's a leadership expert, a Forbes coach, a consultant, and the host of the Black Market Leadership Podcast. We're going to be talking leadership development today and the art and science of leadership, the way the military and the Fortune 500 do it. Kevin, thanks for joining us from Scottsdale, Arizona. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, where it's a nice 70 degrees today.
Is that a real picture behind you? Is the sun really shining in your window, well, maybe we'll just leave it at that. We're getting ready to have snow and ice here on 8 of the next 10 days in Virginia. So let me live vicariously through you for a moment. Hey, so thanks for joining the program. I really appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about, where you grew up, where you went to school, be of interest to a lot of folks in my network. And you were an Army officer as well.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm originally from Georgia. So I still say dog and y'all and because my girlfriend's from Pennsylvania, she says cuz. I'm like, people fight for causes, not causes. So I went to high school in Florida, but eventually I went to the Virginia Military Institute. I graduated in 1999. And I think I graduated with a 2.4 GPA, which was like the 50th percentile in my in my group of history majors. And where did I take that education? Into the Army. I was commissioned an infantry officer in 1999, pre 9/11. Boy, those were different days. I was back in the days where you could drive onto an Army base, no guards necessary, just drive on, do what you wanted.
Hey, you didn't have to take your shoes off to get on an airplane, right?
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. And then I got out in 2005, but during that time I served as a rifle platoon leader. The war came up. I volunteered and they sent me, and I worked OJT as military intelligence. And my final duty station was in Korea, and I actually switched to be an armor officer. I knew I was getting out, so I was like, let's taste the other world of combat arms. So, Bob, after 10 years of being in uniform, 4 VMI and 6 active duty, I had this epiphany. I never liked taking orders from people. Just never liked it. So decided to get out, never work for the man again. And I started doing leadership and strategy development. And ultimately, what does that mean? It means I actually was able to take my knowledge and convert it from the military into business speak. Now, it took years to ultimately do that, but I had partnered with some other consultants out here. And I live in Arizona now, and that's where I really started doing my consulting. And I know we're going to get into this, but one of the things I do is I bring computer wargaming as a means of education and strategy development. So it's been a lot of fun, but COVID has definitely taken its toll on a lot of businesses out here. So I think, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I've been nimble and able to switch to a new model, online model, with blackmarketleadership.com.
Kevin, you were deployed. Where did you go? Afghanistan or Iraq?
I was in Iraq. Well, I was both in Kuwait and Iraq. So I have to say both. I was deployed. This was during the invasion. So it was January of 2003. And I ultimately left in September, I believe. So I was there. I was actually in Camp Doha at the 3-star headquarters, overseeing the entire invasion. So if you think of all these, Jack Reacher, or all these Tom Clancy books or movies where you got the huge screens where the generals are observing and you got the spec ops doing stuff, I was in those rooms watching people do the crazy stuff.
It is hard for me to imagine that. I tell people I was in the analog army. It would take way too much training for me to get caught up on all of that stuff these days. So you had this epiphany. Number one, you didn't want to work for anybody else, but how did you sort of gravitate into leadership as an industry, I guess?
Great question. So when I left the Army, I had no clue that there really were leadership consultants, even strategy consultants. In fact, there's a term that I never even heard of called management consulting. Management consulting, if you go to Bain, McKinsey, basically problem solvers of the strategic sort who help develop leaders, help develop companies. I didn't even know this stuff existed, but I had family members in it. And when I got out in 2005, because of the war, I had saved like 45 grand up. So I went to Texas, basically took a year off. I read a bunch of business books. And one of the things I wanted to do, I, during my time in the Army, I had a roommate and we would play these computer war games called real-time strategy games. And it's like Risk on steroids, where you have to build nations, build economies, and build armies. And I would go out and do it with my roommate. And when we were done, we would say, I was a history major. So I would say, that battle remind me of the Battle of Barbarossa, the invasion of Russia, for this reason, boom, boom, boom. My roommate had been a philosophy major and he would ask questions. Well, why did you go X versus Y? So even in the Army, I realized there's a real educational piece here. There was some real learning that could be taken out of this team activity of gaming. So when I got out of the Army, I said to a family member, hey, I could work with students. I could teach them history, teach them philosophy through the gaming. And she said, why the hell go to students? Go to companies. They'll pay big money for that. And that's where I was really introduced. Yeah. Yeah. So the first real company I worked with was a small startup called LifeLock. They were worth 30 million, had about 30 people in the company, and their entire C-suite went through the gaming. And the purpose was, what I did was I would take these 10 executives into the room, into a computer lab, and only about 4 would be on the computers. And it would almost mimic an Army FTX, where you got the tents, you got the computer set up, you play the war games. And Bob, I would make you the commander. I'd give you a mission, but you'd be in a different room. You could not see the war games, the actual computers themselves. So in a sense, you'd have to bring your staff in, tell them the mission. Hopefully you wrote it down correctly. And then you would strategize. And I would say in 30 minutes, this game starts. So when I hit that start clock, your staff is going back and forth. They're drawing you pictures of the battlefield. You're strategizing. You're giving the people on the ground their orders, all the while your opponent's doing the same thing. And what happened was, it was a whole education. It really is about developing strategy on the go, learning, your competitors aren't going to wait. They're going to act when you're acting. So the question is, how do you strategize on the go? And what came out of it as well was an educational piece in leadership. I really saw how strategy and leadership are thoroughly interrelated. I'm a very aggressive guy. I've always believed in being fast, big picture. I always loved blitzkrieg. So when I strategized for gaming, guess what strategy I always tended to go to? I saw other people who had different behaviors do different types of strategy. So it really started to make sense that different behaviors, different leaders gravitated towards one way of acting versus another. Some like big picture, some like the details. Some are about risk, some are about security. And when you have that kind of knowledge of the team, which was gained out of the gaming, you were really able to understand who's around you, what are the expectations of how the company should be acting, and then you can strategize from that. And I brought that medium there. I had some other consultants there helping talk through it, but I was really able to make the connection. So that's what I've been doing for the past over 15 years.
When you set these things up, who was the opposing force? Did you split up the management team and pit them against one another, or were you acting as op 4, on the other side of the curtain and putting the team together?
Initially, I would act as op 4 in the opposing forces, but I would do it this way. I would set my armies, I would set my units in the field, and I wouldn't move them. So 30 minutes, Bob, your team starts. The screen is open. You can see where I'm at. The question is, would you be looking? So initially I was op 4, but as the teams did this over usually 2, maybe 3 days, then I put the other teams in there. And oh my God, when you put team versus team, boy, the blood,
competitive, huh?
Oh, competitive.
Hey, so this is interesting. Would you give them a 5-paragraph op order, or how were you giving them the instructions?
That's basically what I'd give. I give a situation. I'd give a specific mission, a one-line mission. I give an intent, but I make it very easy. This wasn't Army training, so I would say, here's the intent. As your commander, I would recommend 2 or 3 ways of doing this. This is what success look like, and they would write it down. And based on the behaviors, they would listen or they wouldn't.
You told me some interesting stuff, including some teams that discovered Well, maybe the makeup of the executive team wasn't right. Maybe the chemistry wasn't right. Can you talk about some examples of the epiphanies that people might have had as a result of going through this exercise?
Yeah. So the one story I have permission to talk about is the first time we ever did this, we had a new CMO, and he punched the founder in the face. He
Oh
got
my
so frustrated.
God.
Yeah, so that was one of the learning lessons of this. Was it wasn't just a team exercise, but all the toxicity within the team, all the unspoken truths, or all the elements within the team that really are not spoken but can be seen and felt, they're in there. So that was one thing. So obviously they restructured that from that. But I remember one woman who was a senior director. She was just a go-getter. She was awesome. And up to that point, she just had a great record. And when during the gaming, she clobbered her opponent, and she impressed the CEO so much that she was actually promoted to a VP because of it.
Mm.
Now, it's not the gaming. It wasn't her performance that's in the gaming, but she was really validating what everyone knew. And the same thing is true for other people who were underperforming. We had a VP of sales who always went over budget, always. This guy would spend $2 to get 50 cents. And, he had been a good Soviet general. And in the game, he won, and he wanted a prize for winning. He won an award. We're like, you should have spent $1 for a $2 return. You spent $2 for a 50-cent return. It was horrible. So that allowed me as a consultant to say, slow down. Let's stop right here. Let's talk about where this is coming up. Why are you doing this? And then I would bring in my task and purpose knowledge, my knowledge of the 5-paragraph order, and even the templates we use for the gaming. I would bring that in and basically align people to that. And the beauty about the gaming is when you have a template, a general template, like a common operational picture, everyone now has the same experience. So I never forgot that years later, when LifeLock bought one of their competitors, now this is before they went IPO for the audience, before they went public. Years after the gaming, they had bought one of their competitors, one of their suppliers, I should say. And they was, I think, one of 5 major suppliers, but it affected their competition. And you know how the CEO described it to me? He said, Kevin, remember the time our army went out and we captured the gold and went those bastards get it? It's what we got here.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone understood the language.
Yeah. So this is really coaching. I'm kind of reminded while I'm sitting here talking to you, there's an old saying, I used to do some football coaching, and, football doesn't build character, it reveals it. And I'm curious if there's some of the same dynamic going on in your gaming, if it's not revealing it. So let's talk a little bit about uh, all right, we're going to stop right here, and here's what we're going to do. I told you I was going to do this. I'm going to hit you with the lightning round questions right now, and
Okay.
just to throw you off a little bit. So I got to get my app ready. I'm going to kind of give you time, and then when you hear this sound, all right, we're going to know that we're moving on to the second question. Okay, so are you ready for the lightning round, Kevin Black?
I am ready for the lightning round, Bob.
Okay, question number one. Question number one. You were in the Army. But if you had to choose a different branch in MOS, what would it be?
I would choose the Marine Corps, a different MOS. I did infantry and armor, so I took the coolest ones. I'd probably do intelligence only for the knowledge that I'd be leaving and getting out.
Okay, question number two. Biggest life lesson from your military experience?
Biggest life lesson. Yeah, I think I had a company commander whose dad was a general, and this guy wanted to be a general, and he was he probably is now. He's a very political officer, and I was taken back about how he put precedent over visuals and optics over actual performance and results.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Third and final question. I told you this one. We need to know a little known, interesting trivia fact about Kevin Black.
Okay. I have seen the band Gwar, GWAR, 3 times.
The band Gwar. So you have an eclectic taste in music, huh? So you're a heavy metal guy. Ugh. I couldn't even name a song by that band. Can you give me one title, your favorite?
Oh God. My favorite I think War Demon.
War Demons. Okay. All right. That's something new, the lightning round. I hope it was more fun than maybe you were having.
That's
Putting you
good.
on the spot. Okay. So let's get back into the leadership thing. You've been a Forbes coach, you're a leadership expert. I want to talk about leadership development. I mean, are leaders born or are they made?
I think it's a mixture of both, actually. When you say born, I think people have. So I deal in the field with behaviors. Behaviors are not psychology. And I have read enough books on serial killers and read some on psychology to know that there are people have certain genetics and DNA that actually helps them, I guess, makes it more comfortable for them to be more courageous or to seek more thrills than others. I think that might be an aspect. But I think in my world, in the world of behaviors, everyone from the age of 6 to 8 develops a behavioral profile, a profile that really does not change. So in that sense, you're made. But I think with a certain genetic disposition, some people are more likely to take risks. Some people are more likely to do, I guess, have those kind of attributes that leaders need. I think, especially in chaotic situations. So in a sense, I think you might be, I say 75% developed, 25% born. How's that?
So you really think that some of it is genetic and as opposed to environmental? Like, a
Well,
person
no.
grows up in a particular setting, a particular family, I can clearly see the influence that, parents might have
Oh,
had, that sort of thing.
okay. So I guess the question is nature versus nurture. The environment plays a huge, enormous role. Uh, Absolutely. But when I say behaviors, what you find is behaviors are your emotional responses to your environment.
Right.
So I think your environment plays an enormous role in that, but also how you develop those skills plays another role. In a sense, I call this adaptability, meaning when I was a brand new lieutenant, I was like a bull in a china shop. Attack, attack, attack. I don't care about logistics. Attack. That was my natural behaviors. And I would have been perfect for an infantry company because I adapted well. But if you put me in quartermaster, I've been a total nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
It's when I became conscious of my behaviors and I learned to the situation that I learned that I had talents, but they're not always every opportunity. If I'm a hammer, not everything is a nail. So
Right.
that's really the learned skills in it. So in a sense, if you know who you are and you can develop yourself to adapt to your environment, that makes you a really good leader. But I think again, I think your history, and I do think there probably is some genetic element, though I couldn't tell you what the genetic element is.
When you're coaching somebody, do you take them through sort of a self-analysis like a Myers-Briggs or something? Is any of that element in your workshops?
I do use tools. So I do not use Myers Briggs. Myers Briggs is basically the McDonald's of hamburgers. It's
Right.
it has a very interesting history. No, I use if you use a behavioral tool, you have to be very careful. There are a lot of tools out there. In fact, there's a $2 billion industry of tools. The challenge is with most tools out there, they do not differentiate. Uh, they don't put they don't protect you from confirmation bias. Many of these tools out there, when you fill them out to say who you are, you're filling it out based on who you think or how you think others see you. A
Hmm.
good tool, a very good tool, which is scientifically proven, that can be scientifically validated, can tell you and tells me who you are naturally, Bob, how you're role playing in the past 6, 8 months, what you're doing to adjust to your environment, and it also tells me your stress levels. So I do use tools, a 6 to 8 week snapshot of your stress. And that allows me to ask you what's happening in your environment, in your world that's causing you, Bob, you're highly extroverted. Why are you becoming much more quiet? Why aren't you speaking up? That's what it tells me and allows me to backtrack and see what's happening in your environment or within your team that's actually affecting your performance.
You just kind of added an element to the thing, the stress level side of it. And I've never heard anybody bring that specific topic into the discussion before. Like I said, he's extroverted, he's introverted, he's judgmental, he's sensitive. sensitive. He's, kind of the Myers-Briggs, 12 personality styles or however many it is. And, but, I got to tell you, stress is a huge factor. And I've never heard it stated that way. I mean, how do you measure that?
uh, with a good tool. The tool I use, it's been around for over 40 years. And when you hit, first of all, when you answer they're not even questions. They measure your emotional response to certain words. That's all it does. And when you hit the send button after you answer these 60 questions, or not really any questions, these 60 responses, when you hit the start button, or excuse me, the send button, it correlates, I think, 157,000 times.
Huh.
So it really depends on the tool, but ultimately, what is the stress? It's who you are naturally. It's how you're role playing, how you're adjusting your behavior. And when you take those two, that difference becomes your stress. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. Um, my girlfriend is she's highly extrovert. She's all about people, but she's also a low dominant, meaning she doesn't need to take charge. I have to take charge. If I don't, I feel like I'm uncomfortable. But because of her position, because of what she's done in her life, she has to take charge. Okay. She actually has to take charge of a team, even though she's not comfortable doing it. So when you see her role playing, what that means is when you meet her, you're saying, oh, look, she's a leader. Look at her. She can take charge. I need to put her in a leadership position. That increases the stress. That's why it's not natural to her. So in order for her to adapt, she has to really, really prepare probably more than I do, much more than I do, to be able to handle the people, to make those decisions which are required. That's why anytime people are role playing, you got to know who they are, because I tell you, as you know, when you hire someone from a job, what are they doing? They're role playing. If you know who they are, what they're really good at, for instance, some people are very good at starting initiatives. I'm king of starting initiatives. I have 20 things which I haven't finished. Mm-hmm. Some people are very good at closing. And some people are really good at grabbing on and holding on to an initiative and not letting go. But when you put 20 people on the team and all 20 of those people have thrust, they all start initiatives, guess what they're not doing? No one on that team is comfortable with closing. So that's why the behaviors are really, really important. It's almost like making a mechanized division. I got my infantry here, supported by my armor, supported by my anti-aircraft, supported by my military intelligence. They're all compatible. But when you don't do the behavioral analysis, oftentimes people gravitate to who they like, and usually birds of a feather flock together. So if I'm a high D and I'm fast paced and I might cuss during the interview and you do too, I like you. The challenge is finding behaviors which are compatible with your team, like making that full mechanized division. If not, we'd all be having infantry divisions, armor divisions, just tanks. That's it. No other elements to support us, who might be more methodical, who might be more detail oriented.
So man, you've opened up a couple of strange lines of thought for me. In the military, we put people under stress. You put them through boot camp, right? And they're getting screamed at and yelled at, and I got to go do this and go do that. And if they do it, right, they didn't do it fast enough, and all of that kind of stuff. The thought process being that we're trying to train people to focus and also to deal with stress and all of the negatives. Are you suggesting that we shouldn't teach people to manage stress? We should teach them to understand the level of stress, or both?
Oh, well, no, you absolutely need to manage stress. No, I think you have to do both. Um, what I'm suggesting is with behaviors, specifically with behaviors, everyone has a certain a certain specific set of talents, of things that you're really good at. If you know that, great. But sometimes you have to stretch yourself. I'm very fast paced. So if you put me in an environment which slows me down, that will stress me out. But if I know my behavioral style and I know that this position I'm in is temporary, it is not the permanent state, I can adapt to it. But I will always have the stress of not acting fast enough. Uh, the military is much different. The military, again, I've taught military history for years, and I hope my knowledge is not too antiquated, but we still fight a conventional. We still have a conventional war model. When World War II started, we had 200,000 soldiers under George C. Marshall. But when it ends, we have 9 million. You can't be too selective about the people you bring in. You got to fill in those spots with bodies. So in a sense, you're putting circles, round pegs in square holes, or if that makes sense. You're taking what you can. So the army cannot be very too selective because they just need bodies and they train those bodies. Some people are very adept to those positions. Some people are not. And it's stressful. I was stressful in my position. I didn't like a lot of my positions because I didn't have the freedom that I needed. The Air Force, however, is different. I think the Air Force even uses some behavioral tools. In fact, I know they use the one I use. I think they use it in certain cases because what are they ultimately training? Pilots. They're not training a million-man force. They're training specific pilots. And you want to make sure that if that pilot, that tool is in the bigger tool, that there's real compatibility. So they will invest in that kind of knowledge. But for the army, I just say, which is just a huge land force of bodies, they got to be trained, but you can't really use that kind of a behavioral input. I don't think you just don't have the time or the resources.
Another question for you. What role does failure have in leadership development?
If I remember right, in terms of failure, I think it was Jim Collins. I believe Jim Collins wrote an article a couple of years ago, several years ago, that he visited West Point and he made a study, and he mentioned that in terms of leadership development, one of the reasons why the military develops good leaders is that we accept failure. Failure is just a part of life, but you keep driving forward. That's the big challenge. And I think a lot of leadership development today, I don't think it's all about driving forward. I think it's about reveling, sometimes even reveling in failure. And what I mean is if you go on LinkedIn and you just look at some of the comments, who's writing some of these leadership memes and quotes? Are the CEOs, the founders, the owners with a fire in the belly who want to create something new, or is it the people sitting in office miserable who want their boss to treat them nice? It's a different viewpoint, different worldview. So I think in the military, we see failure as it's a learning opportunity. It's incredibly important. The more you fail, the more you learn, but you got to be conscious of learning it. But I don't think that you can really accept that in the business world. Oftentimes failure will get you kicked out. You could get fired.
Cultural thing. I mean, the businesses that accept and encourage you to, stretch yourself, they acknowledge that you're going to fail and they look at it as a lesson learned. It's not really a failure if we learn something, right, in the process.
Well, what's funny? It's funny you mentioned that because we've been talking about behaviors. There are certain behaviors which failure, that's fine. You accept it, you move on. There are other behaviors out there which see failure almost, it's almost like a death knell to them. I know of one behavioral trait called a high conformist. High conformists are about not just 99%, 100% accuracy, quality, accuracy. And if you don't get that, it's almost a knock to them. It's almost like they have failed in their life if they don't get that kind of success. So to them, if they do have failure, they don't want to show it. So that's why failure is a very different, it's in the eye of the beholder. It really is.
We could have a whole discussion about my next comment, which is, in the world of politics, which has certainly been in our face for the last 6 months. The opposing side, will take any failure that you have and just amplify it. Oh, can you believe that he screwed this up? And they Monday morning quarterback everything, which is the opposite really culturally for setting up the right culture. And the second thing is it's probably one of the reasons why we have such poor leaders in positions in politics, because the best and the brightest recognize the absurd nature of what's going on and don't subject themselves to that. Here's the next question for you.
Can I add one thing to that? What you said?
Sure.
It's a little. I heard a comedian once say, this comedian, I can't remember who it was, but he had the best take for a politician. If you want to win as a politician, Bob, I got the best platform. You can't fail with this one. As a politician, you say, I am for the children and I am against cancer. No one ever fights you. Can't
That's
fail.
right. Well, and unfortunately, most people are so lazy they don't dig into the issues and ask them much more than that. So anyway, hey, let me ask you this question. I think I know part of the answer to this, but why black market leadership? How did you pick that particular name?
Well, obviously double entendre. Luckily my last name is Black, but the fact is, I over the past 2 decades, I've just been uh, to be blunt. I've just been really unimpressed with a lot of leadership development today. It's almost therapeutic, and in military terms, we've been taught, and I totally subscribe to this, that in leadership, there's really two major pillars, complicated pillars, but it's people and mission. If you can balance both, you can be a success. I have found that in corporate America, it is almost exclusively people. It's all about relationships, emotional intelligence, and communication, which are incredibly important. They are very, very important elements, but that cannot be the whole of your curriculum or your content. So, I wanted to provide the type of leadership development that, frankly, you're just not going to get. And I think in corporate America, it's a very holistic one. It's one that integrates leadership, management, strategy. If you're a manager, would you be learning strategy? Yeah, you should be, so you can better contribute to your company strategy. So why black market? It's unconventional resources. And unlike the gaming, though, since I can't be on site, we use Netflix, Hulu, we use streaming services as a way for you to gain experience, to actually make those connections between characters and people you're working with. So that's why it's black market. It really is an underground resource for people who want to get that next step in their profession.
Have you really had to change your delivery because of the pandemic?
No, no, I have not. But the thing is, I'm not. I have changed my customer base, though. I'm not really looking for corporate clients. I'm going right to B2C. I'm going right to the customers through Facebook. If you're 30 years old or 25 or 35 and you want a leadership development, you want an actual education, why go through the company? Go right to the person. Say, hey, why wait till you're 42 to start this out there? Get the education now that can help get you to
Takes
accelerate your
time,
career.
right? I
It
mean,
does.
it's like building muscle and creating good habits.
It does. And hopefully, you don't wait till you're 40 or 50 years old to realize how important it is. Even if you're a solopreneur, that a leadership education is extremely important. It helps you understand who you are and how to leverage your strengths,
It,
which
it,
is critical for business.
how much of leadership is instinctual versus thoughtful? Meaning, uh, I, this is my natural reaction, or I need to step back and think about this and then make a decision. I think it's a combination.
Oh, it is, but what you said instinctually, I would say what you're talking about is behaviors. Some people naturally want to make a decision, but over time they've learned I got to step back and breathe and contemplate. That comes through years of experience and contemplation. You're talking about behaviors and adaptability, meaning they have learned to adjust their behaviors. Some people want to plan, Bob. You give them 3 hours and they will spend 2 hours and 59 minutes planning. You
Mm.
can't do that. You got to spend some time rehearsing, preparing to launch, get ready to execute. Their natural
Sometimes you
instincts.
need to make the decision in the first 5 minutes and save 2 hours and 55 minutes.
That's exactly right. But some people out there have the behavioral they're I'm gonna say not compulsivity, but they have the
They're
natural instinct to
predisposed to
plan.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is the behavior, the natural reaction to their environment. And question is, have they learned and can they adapt to it?
Kevin, you've said in your bio that you've created $500 million of value for your clients.
Helped.
Where's it
I've helped to create.
helped
Yes.
create? Okay, yeah, all
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
that's
No. No.
fair.
No.
Thank
No.
you.
It's a team sport, but in a lot of my work, I'm really big about integrating leadership development with strategy. In fact, I think they're thoroughly interrelated, meaning, look, strategies never go according to plan. Even McKinsey said, I think 90% of strategies don't fit, they fail. The reason is it requires situational decision making. So, what I've done in my career is help companies create the strategies. I bring the templates, the development, the training. I've actually coached their executives, their directors, even their frontline managers. And over time, they've brought me back the numbers. And I'm very proud to say that I've helped to create over $500 million helped to create that through my templates, through my strategy and leadership workshops, and through coaching.
Tell everybody a little bit about the Black Market Leadership Podcast. What's the program there? How do you air? What are you doing?
Yeah, so we're on Apple iTunes, and we're on Amazon Audible. And I have a podcast now that I'm about bringing stories of disruption and breaking the status quo. So I know you and I both interviewed the authors of The Talent War, Mike Sorelli, SEAL Team 6. So we talked to him. I had a 3-hour.
Mike's got a style, man. He can he can stare you down through the Zoom video right there.
Yes. I think I told you, or at least I told someone else that it was great guy, very intense. Listening to it is a lot different from watching it. Like the Nixon and JFK debates. Yeah. So my podcast, I just want to bring interesting things. And I've had a whole podcast on streaming services and behaviors on during Halloween. We connected Salem's Lot, Stephen King's book, to leadership development. That was a lot of fun. So I'm interested in bringing you unconventional resources to the listener out there, things that you could really bite onto and just have fun with.
How do people get in touch with you?
Please go to LinkedIn, Kevin Black, pretty easy to find, Kevin Black 1999, or my email address, kevin@blackmarketleadership.com. Or if you like, go to my website, blackmarketleadership.com, create a free profile, log in, please. And look, right now, next couple months, we have a lot of free content. We're going to start charging for it in April. So now's the time to get in, get some great videos, some great quizzes. And I'm excited to do this. So come on and say hello.
Okay, well, that's interesting stuff. So we've been listening to Kevin Black. He's the leadership expert, again, a Forbes coach, a leadership consultant, a host of the Black Market Leadership Podcast. It amazes me how quickly 30 minutes goes by. We tried some new things today. I was trying to be a little disruptive with the lightning round. Shout out to my interns for suggesting that we do something like that. We gave it a shot. If we failed, we learned something today. So hopefully we'll refine that thing. Listen, I really appreciate you coming on the program. Thank you so much for making time for me.
Yeah, well, thank you. And congratulations on Veteran Crowd. What a great network, beautiful site. And what you're doing, I mean, you're doing some just excellent work. A lot of these veterans, they need these resources. And I think you're just doing, you're doing the Lord's work. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. We're trying to do a few things disruptive here in the next 6 months. So maybe I'll be a candidate to be a guest on your program and talk about some of the failures I've experienced that can be turned into leadership lessons. Trust me, I've got a lot of them. Hey, everybody, you've been listening to the Spotlight on the Veteran Crowd Network. Again, our guest has been Kevin Black of the Black Market Leadership Podcast. We air on Tuesdays and Fridays, and we bring veterans who are making a difference in our community into your living room every week. So, Kevin, thank you so much. Bravo Zulu to you, and that's a wrap.
Thank you for listening to Spotlight by Veteran Crowd. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and uploads, please visit our website at veterancrowdnetwork.com. We'll see you next time.